Welcome to the Finance Garage podcast, your go-to podcast for navigating the world of finance. I'm Jonathan, your financial guide, bringing the latest market trends, investment strategies, and financial news that matters to you. And by the way, I'm also going to share my other passion, which is cars.
At the SWU Group, we help everyday families achieve financial success. Our integrated services include financial planning, accounting, credit advisory, and estate planning. We're here to guide and support you every step of the way, from custom investment strategies to maximizing tax efficiency. We ensure your financial goals are met with peace of mind. Visit simonwu.com.au for more information.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Finance Garage. As always, Jonathan Wu here, Senior Financial Advisor and Principal at the SWU Group. Now today we're going to talk about something that's different to investing, because that's obviously a lot of the content that we have on the podcast is around investing and markets. We're going to take a little bit of a different tack and we're going to talk about estate planning. And more specifically, a part of estate planning that doesn't usually come up in conversations between families that we find as financial advisors, but really should. And it's the topic of testamentary trusts. When most people think about estate planning as a concept, they usually just think of a will. Now, yes, a will is essential, of course, and it sets out who gets what when you inevitably pass away. But for many families, and particularly those with kids or grandkids, or complex families with multiple marriages over time, a simple will usually is not enough. And this is where these testamentary trusts come in. They're not for everybody, but they can provide tax benefits, protection from creditors, and more control over how wealth is passed on. So tonight I'm going to break it down in terms of how they work, why they work, and who might benefit from using them. Now, obviously, to start off, before we can talk about those things, we need to talk about what is a testamentary trust. So let's start with the basics. Think about a testamentary trust as a trust that's created under your will, so it's actually within your will document, and it only comes into effect when you pass away. Think of it as a legal container that holds the assets you leave behind. And instead of giving assets directly to your children or your spouse or other beneficiaries, these assets go into a trust. And then the trust itself distributes income and capital in line with the rules you've set. So the whole rule book, or the trust deed, which governs how a trust operates, is all within the will itself. Now, this is different from a normal family trust, which some people might be more familiar with, which you set up while you're still alive. A testamentary trust is activated after death, which is why it's part of estate planning. For everyday Australians, the power of a testamentary trust is that it gives flexibility. It allows the next generation to decide how best to use the income and capital you've left them within the framework you set up. So, given now we have a simple and basic understanding of what is a testamentary trust, let's think about how they work. And how does it all play out in practice? So here's a simple example. Let's say you pass away and you leave $500,000 to your daughter. Now, if that goes to her directly, it's her money straight away. Now, this is where some people usually ask me a question with regards to how assets are transferred, and there's some confusion. Remember that no matter how you transfer assets to your beneficiaries, whether it be you transfer it into a trust and the trust into them, or you transfer them to them directly, you lose all control from that point. So you can't say, oh, I'm going to leave $100,000 to my daughter, in which she needs to hold that for a certain period of time before passing it to my granddaughter or her daughter when she turns 18. This is where trusts more or less come into play. Once you've given it to your beneficiary, your power to control that money ends there, okay? So if you give your daughter, in this example, $500,000, goes to her directly, it's her money straight away. Now, that might be fine, but if she's only 18, then that's going to be a problem. She doesn't know how to control this amount of money. What if in the future she's going to go through a divorce? We all know that divorce rates in Australia and really broadly around the world are in excess in Western nations over 50%. What if she's starting a business and her creditors come knocking? Suddenly, that inheritance in the hands of your daughter or son is at risk. Now, instead of directly transferring it to her, imagine you leave that $500,000 or $500,000 into a testamentary trust, which your daughter is a beneficiary. The money is controlled by a trustee, which could be her, could be another family member or a professional, and the trustee decides year by year how much income is distributed and to whom, within the rules that you've set out when you prepared your will. Now, the magic of all this is in the flexibility. If your daughter has children, the trustee can distribute income to the grandkids as well, because you set inside the rules of the trust that beneficiaries can also include grandchildren. And here's the kicker. Income distributed to minors from a testamentary trust is taxed at adult rates, not the punitive minor rates where you are limited to passive income of $416 a year. That, in of itself, is a huge tax planning advantage. So we then move on to why they work from a tax and asset protection perspective, right? These are the two main reasons. If we look at the first lens, which is tax, they allow the income splitting across multiple beneficiaries, as I've just discussed, because beneficiaries that are minors, i.e. those under 18 years old, the income that they receive in their hands are taxed at adult rates. And the tax-free threshold that we currently are sitting on for adults is around $18,000 to $20,000 a year. So therefore, instead of pushing it to family members who are on the highest marginal tax rate, you can then split it out. If we look at the second lens, which is the asset protection side of things, assets in a testamentary trust are harder to attack. If your child is getting divorced, the inheritance in a trust may not be treated the same as money held directly in their name. If they go bankrupt, creditors may find it harder to access those funds. Now, it's not foolproof because at the end of the day, family law court in Australia has certain powers. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't comment about it. But regardless, putting another wall between creditors or other people that are trying to breach or pierce through the trust makes it an extra level harder for them. So it is an extra layer of protection. So in essence, testamentary trusts preserve wealth across generations, keeping it safe from tax erosion and other life's curveballs. So you now know what it is, how it works, and the two major benefits. So then who should actually consider using one? The first group that we usually see as part of our work as financial advisors is parents with young children. Think about this. If something happened to you tomorrow, would you really want your kids to get their inheritance outright at 18 years of age? I have clients who have children that they don't trust and they are well in their 40s. Okay? So a testamentary trust allows you, while you are still alive, to put conditions around the timing and use of that money. This has got nothing to do with locking away the money forever. There has to become an endpoint where they can access the capital, but you can put the rules around it and they cannot change it. The second group of people that we work with, where we feel that testamentary trusts are very useful, are blended families. So if you've remarried, you have children from a previous relationship, a testamentary trust can help you control how wealth is divided fairly without leaving it all up to chance. Because in those complex situations, you do want certainty. And in many cases, if you've remarried, for example, and you have children from a previous spouse and you want to leave them the money, we can also get into the topic of life interests. And life interest is a whole nother topic which we'll talk about probably in another episode, but life interest then gives you another ability to control the way your assets are used after you pass away without directly removing the inheritance right or inheritance wish to your children. The third group is families with vulnerable beneficiaries. So if we see clients that have a child with a disability, a mental disability, I recently dealt with one, or isn't great with money overall, a trust can protect them from themselves and others well into the future. And finally, wealthy families. Now, this is a broad range of clients, and where tax planning becomes a major consideration, a testamentary trust is almost a must with these types of clients. Usually I would say, if you have an estate that's over, say, $3 to $4 million, it's something that you should consider. And most people will sit back and go, oh, well, I don't have an estate that's $3 to $4 million. That seems like a lot of money. I've only got about $1 million in super. If you live in Sydney nowadays and Brisbane, property prices are through the roof. Remember, the house that you live in, yes, you're not extracting value from in terms of investment returns, but if you live in a house in Sydney, it's probably at least $2 million. And so 2 million plus $1 million in super is already 3, right? Do you want that 3 million to be then transferred as a legacy to your children in the most controlled way to reduce the risks that we've talked about, okay? Because the benefits outweigh the extra complexity. Now, I don't need to tell anyone that's listening today how expensive lawyers are, right? And so the thousands of dollars that you put forward to design, construct, and prepare a good estate plan reduces the risk of having to have a lot of legal fees in the future when people start to contest your wishes.
Ready to take the first step in investing, or just looking to continue growing your wealth without being inundated with financial information? With SWU Online Invest, we offer a range of expertly managed portfolios designed to match your investment needs. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, know that we will work tirelessly to ensure your investments are strategically positioned to maximize your goals. Visit swuonlineinvest.com.au today.
Now, if you at this point are starting to go, oh yeah, Jonathan starts making a bit of sense to me, what are some practical considerations that you need to think about if you are thinking about drafting a will that includes a testamentary trust? Now, firstly, you need a properly drafted will. Now, a will at the end of the day, you could write at the back of a serviette. It doesn't really matter, right? But the problem is, there is legalese, and we get specialist trustee and estate planning lawyers to prep our clients' wills in conjunction with the strategy that we've designed. And the testamentary trusts, as I mentioned, are created through the will, okay? So obviously, you need to partner up with your advisor and with your solicitor, or they will have a solicitor, like in our case, who will design the right strategy, take into account tax, protection, and beneficiaries. Now, the second thing that is really important is you need to nominate a trustee. Now, the trustee is the person or entity that controls the trust and makes decisions on behalf of the trust, but not to their benefit unless they're a beneficiary as well. But they are there to control it and make decisions on behalf and for the benefit of the named and unnamed beneficiaries. So a trustee can be a beneficiary, it could be another family member that's not a beneficiary, or it even could be the professional. The trustee has a lot of power, so you need to choose wisely. Now, there's another person above there called the appointer, which has the power to hire and fire trustees. That person has even more power, but for the sake of not putting everyone to sleep, from a practical standpoint, the trustee day-to-day is the most powerful. The third major consideration is that while testamentary trusts are flexible, they also involve ongoing administration. They need to file tax returns. Those need to be lodged every year, just like your own personal tax return. Records need to be kept. There are costs, right? But for many families, the tax savings that you get out of it, plus the protection, more than outweighs those costs. It is a lot cheaper than you may think. And finally, remember, these testamentary trusts are not set and forget. Circumstances change, family dynamics shift, the laws evolve. So it is good to review your will and your other estate planning documents, including enduring powers of attorney, your appointment of enduring guardian, and depending on the state, you might have advanced healthcare directives, is that review them every couple of years with your advisor to ensure that the way it's written, including those of you that would consider using a testamentary trust, still reflects your wishes. Now, let me give you a complex family situation, which is a real world example to sort of end off, that sort of brings through to life everything that we've talked about. Now, I once saw a family where the parents left their estate directly to their 3 adult children. One of those 3 children was actually in the middle of a messy divorce. The inheritance for that 1/3 went straight to the marital asset pool and was split with the ex-spouse. So effectively, half the inheritance was lost. Now, if you compare that to another family who used testamentary trusts, the assets went into a trust for each child. When one of the children later went bankrupt in a failed business, this trust structure meant the inheritance was largely protected. Now, of course, it can't save the business, but it preserved the family wealth and the legacy transferring from one generation to the next. That is the most important part, and that is the biggest takeaway. We are in the middle of one of the largest wealth transfers ever seen in history because of the baby boomer generation. And so getting it right and getting your estate planning right is critical. So here's the bottom line. Yes, your will is essential, which I've talked about, but for many families, we believe that testamentary trusts are a smarter choice because it gives the flexibility, it provides the tax benefits, and offers protection at a time when your loved ones might need it most. It's not just for the wealthy, as I mentioned, because house prices in Sydney, where we're based, is astronomically high. Everyday Aussies with children, blended families, or other significant assets should at least explore whether a testamentary trust makes sense. Now, obviously get the advice from your advisor, get the advice from your estate planning specialist solicitor, but it is one piece of the toolkit as part of a financial planner that most people don't think about. And it's something that you should in order to give you the peace of mind well into the future. So that's that for this episode of the Finance Garage. As always, happy to take feedback on all the socials. You can hit me up there, or you can directly email me at jonathan.wu@simonwu.com.au. As always, remember to listen to the disclaimer at the end, and I look forward to for you guys to tune in on the next episode. See you later.
This podcast is not financial product advice and is intended to provide information only. It does not take into account the investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of any person. You should assess whether the information is appropriate for you and consider talking to a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Any investment examples are for illustrative purposes only. The information is taken from sources which are believed to be accurate, but Simon Wu, Jonathan Wu, SWU Financial Planning, and Personal Financial Services Limited accept no liability of any kind to any person who relies on the information contained in the podcast. Unless expressly stated, none of the information should be taken as a recommendation. For more information, please visit www.simonwu.com.au.